Not of cancer, just an old heart on a strenuous hike. 84 years old. His ticker stopped. DDT didn't kill him. That was 1980. Then we get to 1992 and the Rio Earth Summit. And I'm working at Channel 5 in San Francisco. And I'm looking at all the garbage coming out of this Rio Earth Summit. And I see that George H.W. Bush signs on to this Rio Earth Summit. And they've got this crazy thing called Agenda 21. And I remember telling anyone who would listen, do you know what's in Agenda 21? The president just signed this thing. It says that health care is a right, housing is a right, and that pollutants or greenhouse gases like CO2 need to be regulated by the government through a taxation program. It's in Agenda 21. And people say, no way. It's in the agenda. He signed it. That was 1992. And then 1993, I remember telling people, the House Madam, Nancy Pelosi, lowly congresswoman from San Francisco, gets on the House floor saying we need to follow through with the agenda of Agenda 21. We need housing as a right, health care as a right, and we need to regulate greenhouse gases. This is in 1993. People were looking at me like I had tinfoil on my head. And I'm saying, no, she said it, she really, no way, she did. Then we get to Al Gore, 1995. And I'm in the Channel 5 newsroom, and I'm reading how he has now put together the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And so I'd never heard this term before. I thought, where does this come from? So I'm reading about sustainable development. And sustainable development is clearly defined by the United Nations as a transfer of wealth. That's what it is. It's a transfer of wealth. Using the environment as a transfer of wealth. Al Gore is in charge of the United States Council on Sustainable Development, and he puts together something called our common, the new consensus, and this new consensus is just gobbled up, absolutely gobbled up by legislators all over the country at every level of government, because it is essentially the handbook for environmental action. And in this document, this is again 1995, Al Gore says, even in the face of scientific uncertainty, we must go forward with these proposals. I remember telling people this, and they looked at me like I was crazy. No, this is what he said. I have the document. He said we have to build consensus on difficult issues. This is Al Gore, 1995. Then something happened in 1997. I signed a document called the Leipzig Agreement. And I'll never forget how the Leipzig Agreement said the protocols put forward by Kyoto just don't have any scientific basis, and the United States should not apply the Kyoto standards, which are essentially like AB 32 here in this state, and what Obama and crew want to give us with this cap and trade bill. Just a group of scientists, TV meteorologists, climate scientists, we signed this document saying, you know, probably not the best thing to do because the science is uncertain right now. Science is uncertain. I signed this document, I don't think anything of it, and I start receiving phone calls from quote-unquote journalists all over the country who are saying, okay, so you're a TV meteorologist, right? I said, yeah. And you signed the Leipzig Agreement. Well, why did you do this? And so I gave my reasons. I said, well, the science is a little murky, and I'm not really sure that mankind's output of CO2 is really warming the planet, so that's why I signed it. The questions turned into an inquisition, and the inquisition would devolve to name-calling. And I remember getting off the phone during one of these interviews thinking, what kind of crappy excuse for journalism is this? I'm getting reamed out from these guys just for signing a document. And that's when I realized this global warming thing, this environmental movement is really out of control. And I remember going home and telling my wife about that particular conversation, to which she said, no way. And I said, why? So I have all these little factoids just running through my brain at all times, and the fights I used to have in the Channel 5 newsroom with some of my left-leaning colleagues, not all of them, but some of them, were just tremendous. And I'd come home telling my wife, and she would say, and I'd say, why? So a couple of years ago, my wife says, you know what? You need to write a book. Just all this stuff you've been talking about since you were a kid. And my wife's known me since I was 18. She said, all this stuff you've been talking about, you need to put it into a book, and you need to call it No Way. Prosser, Lee has written dozens of books, mostly for other people. He's a collaborative writer, he's a ghost writer, he knows how to write. He also used to write for President Ronald Reagan, pretty good for me. So I gave Lee a copy of No Way just to see what he thought. And Lee responded within a few days and said, Brian, got it in the book? No way. He said, you need to wrap all of these crazy news items around a topic. They just gotta have a topic. So I thought, okay, wait. I'm passionate about this global warming thing. I'll come up with a book called Global Whining. Global Whining. I kind of liked it. It had a nice ring to it. Global Whining, Confidence to Confront the Biggest Scam in History. That'll be the name of the book. So I put the book together, started shopping it around. I've never done this before. I didn't realize that you can't just approach a publisher with your book. You have to have an agent approach a publisher with your book. So, okay, now I'm shopping around for agents. Problem is, you can't approach an agent with your book unless you've published a book. It's kind of like the Writers Union in Hollywood. It's the same thing. You can't be a member of the Writers Union unless you have a screenplay. You can't have a screenplay unless you're a member of the Writers Union. Strange doings in this world of literature. But I did happen to find an agency that was willing to take a risk on me. They kind of liked the idea, and they thought, you know, he's telling this story in a brand new and fresh way. Let's give him a shot. So, wrote the book, shopping it around. First publisher that bites. First publisher that bites is Penguin Books. Gigantic book distributor. Oddly enough, they do all of Al Gore's books. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh, right, they probably just wanted to take your book and bury it. Now, these people, it's all about money. It's kind of like the guys who run KSFO. They also run KGO. So they got the liberal, they got the conservative, they're just business guys, that's all they are. So, Penguin Books. And I'm in this huge conference call, it looks like we're going to get close to sealing the deal, and I can just picture all of these people in the conference call at Penguin. They're all 20s, early 30s. I'm guessing from the conversation, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, New York University, Smith, kind of that type. And they're saying, you know, we've never heard this stuff before. We didn't know that there wasn't any global warming. I mean, we thought it was like many degrees warmer today than it's ever been. But your book clearly shows us that's not the case. And carbon dioxide, we always thought that was a pollutant. You're telling us it's a necessary ingredient for life. That there's this relationship with the plants where they take it in and then they put out oxygen. And the stuff you have in this book about Al Gore, wow! We didn't know his family was related to communists. We didn't know any of that stuff. And I remember reading, like in college, about the Teapot Dome scandal. You're telling us he pulled off his own Teapot Dome scandal? We've never heard of any of this before. And you're saying he's going to make all this money off of being green? Wow. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what the problem is? These kids were taught what to think, not how to think. Parents spend $100 grand on their education, $200 grand on their education. They're robots. So they're taken by all this, and then the capper. They said, you know, maybe we can make this work. Do you think you could add maybe a couple chapters on being green? That ain't gonna happen. Okay, thank you very much. Check, please. That was it. I was done. Couldn't do it. You see, there's that part of me. Some people would say, Brian, it was a great business opportunity. The problem is, I don't even know what being green means. To me, this is as being green as I get this shirt. That's it. This is being green for me. I like the shirt. That's it. I don't understand being green at all. And I don't think they did either. It reminds me of another store where I just opened mouth and inserted Florsheim and blew a deal. But you know, that's just the way I am. I don't care. I don't really care. You hear that on the radio from